I picked up a little girl and raised her, only to later discover she was the true heiress of the childless Marquis's estate. For her future, I hardened my heart and sent her back home. I thought she would live a life of luxury and privilege from then on, but I never expected to find her in a mass grave, without shedding a tear. I buried her and then set up a stall selling sliced, raw fish right in front of the Marquis's estate. The fake heiress didn't know that we six-fingered women are naturally fertile. If one true heiress wasn't enough to rival her, then let the Marquis's estate have a few more young heirs. By the 3rd month of selling raw fish in the capital, I had become the renowned raw fish beauty. A fresh perch, scaled, deboned, and sliced with swift, decisive strokes of the knife. In moments, a plate of translucent, jade-like fish slices was ready. Then, I would personally pick up a slice and feed it to the highest, bidding young master, smiling sweetly as I asked, "How does it taste, my lord?" Because of this, noble sons flocked to watch me slice fish. Among them, many wished to take me as a concubine, but I politely declined each one. I was waiting for someone. Today, he finally appeared, tall and graceful, with an air of elegance. In his early 30s, truly the prime of a man's life. As usual, I fed him a slice of perch. "Does it please you, my lord?" His gaze lingered on my hand for a moment, revealing a look of admiration and awe. Yet, when his eyes fell upon the butterfly tattoo beside the thumb of my right hand, he regretfully averted his gaze. The knife gleams like water. The salt rivals snow. Delicate hands slice the perch. Such beautiful hands. Naturally flawless. Why mar their charm with a tattoo? I whispered in his ear. "My lord, this was a birthmark. I inked a butterfly to hide the blemish. Does it displease you?" As I spoke, my fingers lightly brushed his lips before withdrawing. His throat moved involuntarily. I smiled, soft and alluring. I had lied to him. Beside the thumb of my right hand, there once grew my 6th finger. 3 months ago, to learn the art of slicing raw fish, I chopped it off myself, all for the sake of getting close to this man before me, the Marquis of Fengshin, the biological father of my daughter. 2. My surname is Chung, but I have no given name. The villagers called me the 6-fingered cursed woman. The reason was simple. Our village had peculiar feng shui. A 6-fingered woman was born unlucky, yet blessed with fertility. In my first year of marriage, I gave birth to a daughter, but I never saw her face. For while I lay unconscious after childbirth, my husband's family carried her away in a small bucket and threw her into an ice hole. The following year, I bore twin sons, but I never saw them either, for before my placenta was even delivered, my husband's family drove me out the door. They had their heirs. They no longer needed a cursed woman like me. With nowhere to go, I thought of drowning myself. But by the riverbank, I found a tiny baby girl. I had a daughter now. I no longer wanted to die. With her in my arms, I sought shelter in a dilapidated temple. By day, I worked on the fishing boat. By night, I raised this child in the dilapidated temple. I named her Amy Chow, and from then on, we relied on each other for survival. She was very well behaved, never crying or fussing. As soon as she was tall enough to reach the stove, she picked up a spatula as if by instinct. She loved to smile, her dimples showing every time she ran out of the temple to greet me with laughter when I returned home. I cherished her like a precious jewel, yet guilt gnawed at me for not being able to give her a better life. This guilt reached its peak when she turned 15. It was time for her to be betrothed, but no one in the vicinity would have her. I was frantic with worry, but she remained indifferent. "I don't want to marry yet. Staying with you forever sounds perfect." It was at this time that uninvited guests arrived at the temple. They claimed my Amy Chow was the true heiress of the Marquis of Fengshin's household, the long-lost only daughter. They wanted to take Amy Chow back to live a life of luxury. The Marquis of Fengshin's household. I knew of it. The Marquis had few heirs. For many years, only one concubine had borne him a daughter, Pearl Yi. For this reason, the entire Marquis's household doted excessively on that young lady, making her the envy of all. Even the concubine rose to prominence because of her, overshadowing the Marquis's wife to the point of suffocation. But if my daughter is the true heiress, then who is that girl? She? The wet nurse's bastard child. This old maidservant is the Marchioness's trusted confidant. It was the mix of eagerness and disdain in her tone that led me astray. Even the bastard of the Marquis household lives in such splendor. My daughter is the true heiress who is lost and suffered greatly in the outside world. Naturally, that would make her even more esteemed and glorious beyond compare. Without any hesitation, I bid my daughter a tearful farewell. Amy Chow was still crying and unwilling to leave, so I comforted her. You go first. Next spring, I'll come visit you. But she would never see another spring. 3 months later, I learned that she had died. In the Marquis's household, she did not live the life I had dreamed for her. The Marquis found her vulgar, the madam called her wanton, and her fiancé accused her of usurping another's place. They watched her like hawks, treating her as a thief, shielding the cherished fake heiress in an ironclad embrace, terrified their daughter might suffer because of her existence. Finally, after being falsely accused of pushing the fake heiress into the water, their daughter was publicly caned, stripped naked, utterly humiliated. At 15, she chose to end her own life. Those who die unnaturally are barred from ancestral graves, fearing it might frighten the fake heiress. Her corpse was hastily dumped into a mass grave. I went to fetch her with a wooden cart. When I found her, she still clutched the longevity lock I'd given her in her stiff fingers. I'd heard the Marquis of Fengshin, Yun Ji, adored sliced raw fish. The bloodier, the better. After burying Amy Chow, I knelt before the finest raw fish chef in the capital, but the master said my 6th finger hindered my knife work. I picked up the silver fish, cleaving blade, and without hesitation, severed that extra finger. It even twitched slightly upon landing. My master laughed. Good, for slicing raw fish. Swift and decisive cuts are essential. I soon graduated as a master myself. Then, I rented a small stall on Fortune God Street, where the Marquis's residence was located. Persistence pays off. Yun Ji, he took the bait I cast. Hidden beneath my pinky nail was the finest aphrodisiac. Normally, I curled my little finger while slicing fish, and nothing happened. But if I gently extended it and brushed the fish slices, then, so hot, Yun Ji's eyes darkened with desire as he pulled me close by the waist. His voice hoarse, beautiful, come back to the Marquis's residence with me. That night, his powerful body moved above me. It wasn't entirely the drug's doing. Over the years, Yun Ji had taken concubines with sturdy builds and wide hips, all for the sake of bearing heirs. He must have rarely, if ever, indulged so unrestrainedly with a temptress like me. Yet even so, he had only one daughter, Pearl Yi, whom he naturally doted on to the extreme, so much so that the entire family lost their senses, mistaking a little green tea for a pure white flower, even distrusting their own flesh and blood. But it doesn't matter, since a true heiress couldn't compete with a fake one. Then I wouldn't mind adding a few young heirs and little misses to the Marquis's household. When that time comes, let the Marquis weigh for himself. Which is more important, the fake heiress or his own sons? With this thought, I seductively wrapped my arms around Yunji's sweat-drenched neck, a cold smirk playing on my lips, though my voice dripped with saccharine sweetness. My lord, his response was only heavier breaths. A night of debauchery passed. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the heavy curtains, Pearl Yi stormed in like a madwoman, sword in hand. Without a word, she lunged at me, slashing wildly. Where did this vile woman come from, daring to seduce my father? I'll kill you. Behind her trailed the weeping concubine Zheng. I screamed and immediately pushed the half asleep Yun Ji away. Pearl Yi swung her blade, striking Yun Ji in an instant. He winced in pain, clutching his wound as he roared. Pearl, what are you doing? Trying to kill your own father? Pearl Yi had meant to hurt her adoptive father. She froze, her tears falling like scattered beads. I didn't mean to. Father, how could you? Yesterday was my mother's birthday, and yet you. Yoonji stiffened, as if waking from a dream. His gaze darted between me and the tear-streaked face of concubine Jung, hesitation flickering across his expression. Yesterday was Zheng's birthday? Then I knew exactly what he was about to say. The usual self-reproach. How could he forget his beloved concubine's birthday and fool around instead? What a disgrace. But men of his station never punish themselves for such regrets. In the end, I'd be the one to suffer. So I cut him off, burying my face in my hands with a wail. My lord, this humble widow has been forcibly taken by you and can no longer face the world. I only beg that after my death, you grant me a simple coffin and a small burial plot. As I spoke, I rose from the bed and lunged headfirst toward the wall. But Yoonji reacted swiftly, grabbing me just in time. He watched as I covered my face and wept bitterly, his gaze lingering briefly on my pale hands before slowly tracing the curves of my voluptuous figure. I had just turned 30, the very peak of a woman's allure. He turned to his furious daughter and grieving concubine, sighing, "Enough. It's been long since I took a new companion. Let this woman serve as a chamber attendant." "Father," Pearl pointed her sword at me in disbelief. "What's wrong with you? Bringing home every stray, fragrant or foul. How could you?" "Pearl, mind your words." Already suffering from his wounds, Yoonji's patience wore thin as Pearl repeatedly defied him, his expression darkening. "This matter does not concern you." Dismissed, Pearl paused, biting her lip tightly as she was unwillingly dragged away by concubine Jung. Yoonji soon left as well to tend his wounds. I quietly trailed after the mother and daughter, overhearing Pearl and the wet nurse comforting the distraught concubine Jung. "Mother, don't cry. She's just a bedchamber maid who can't bear children. She'll never surpass us." "Exactly, madam. You should whisper in the Marquis's ear more often, urging him to petition for our young lady to be named the heiress." "What nurse?" I stared at the plump woman for a long moment. This was the woman who had swapped her own daughter with my Amy Chow all those years ago. After Amy returned to the Marquis's household, she couldn't bear the sight of this vile woman and had her expelled. But with tearful pleas and Pearl's support, the truth was twisted. The wicked woman became a pitiable victim, while Amy was slapped by concubine Jung and scolded for being heartless. And now, my daughter died a tragic death, while she lives in comfort and health. And her daughter even dares to aspire to become the female heir. I clench my teeth. Meals must be eaten bite by bite. People must be killed one by one. I touched my lower abdomen, as if already sensing a seed sprouting within. This child was conceived only after I took a potent aphrodisiac, destined not to survive, not to grow. Then let it be a life for a life. Now that I have my status, I must go see the Marchioness. Over the years, concubine Jung, having borne the household's only daughter, has enjoyed undiminished favor. Meanwhile, the Marchioness's maternal family gradually declined, leaving her powerless to contend. She was marginalized into a small Buddhist shrine, her health failing, her demeanor subdued. Yet when she saw me, she still nodded politely and said, "You finally come. Please, sit." Beside her stood Nanny Zhao, who had once gone to fetch Amy Chow, her hands respectfully at her sides. I did not take a seat, but instead bowed solemnly to the mistress and her servant. "Thank you, madam, for sending someone to inform me of Amy Chow's death, allowing me to bury her. Thank you, matron, for your advice. I learned that Lord Yi enjoys sliced raw fish, which helped me enter the manor to seek revenge. It was nothing. When matron Sheen went to fetch Amy Chow, she heard that the six-fingered woman from your village is naturally fertile. Don't forget our agreement." I bowed my head humbly and replied with utmost respect. "Once I have avenged my grievances, I will leave. Any child born, be it a son or daughter, shall be yours, madam." Pleased with my compliance, the madam smiled. As for me, I pretended not to notice the hidden meaning in her smile and calmly discussed the next steps of our plan. After that single night with me, Yoonji seemed utterly enchanted, lingering in my quarters for half a month without respite. The Marchioness was delighted. She invited several fortune tellers to the manor, who examined my face and then joyfully declared to Yunji, "The masters all agree. Lady Chung bears the most auspicious countenance for bearing sons. My lord, rejoice, for heirs are surely within reach now." These were the words Yunji you love to hear the most, and he immediately promoted me from a chamber maid to a concubine. Before this, no childless concubine had ever been elevated so quickly. The household was instantly thrown into an uproar. Everyone said that, judging by the momentum, I might truly conceive and bear a child, and when that happened, Concubine Zheng and her daughter would be in trouble. This suddenly filled Concubine Zheng and her allies with a sense of crisis. Watching their guarded and resentful gazes, a cold smirk curled at the corner of my lips. I deliberately dismissed my maids and lingered alone by the well, pretending to have lost something very important. Before I knew it, Nanny's son appeared behind me. "Concubine Chung, what are you looking for?" Pretending not to notice the malice in her voice, I replied with a hint of arrogance. "The earrings the Marquis gifted me last night were made of the finest luminous pearls. Somehow, I've lost one, so I'm searching for it." "Oh, the Marquis truly dotes on you," Nanny's son said with a forced smile. "Something so precious. Could it have fallen into the well?" "Perhaps." With a foolish and vacant expression, I stupidly leaned over the well's edge and peered inside. The next moment, Nanny's son's eyes flashed with cunning as she reached out and shoved me hard. "Ah!" I screamed as I plummeted into the well, immediately thrashing to resurface. I had fallen in on purpose. After years of working on fishing boats, I was an excellent swimmer, good enough to survive. Then, I could logically take the abortion medicine and pin the blame on Nanny's son, but I hadn't anticipated this. Just as my head broke the surface, something heavy yanked at my feet, dragging me down, making it impossible to rise further. I looked down, and what I saw shattered my soul with terror. A trip rope. Someone had set a trip rope in the well beforehand. Concubine Zheng and her daughter had seen through my ploy to lure them out, and countered with a trap of their own. The rope coiled tightly around my ankles, and the more I struggled, the tighter it became. Through the murky well water, I faintly glimpsed Nanny's son's triumphant smile. Now, nothing could stand in Mingzhu's way to success. A quarter of an hour later, the well's surface grew still once more. I waited until she had vanished from sight. Then I abruptly surfaced from the water. Gasping for breath, I sheathed the dagger that had cut the restraining rope. Fishermen always carry blades when at sea, lest they become entangled in nets or seaweed and meet a needless death. Then, a rope descended from the well's edge, effortlessly pulling me up. "Madam, Nanny Zhao, thank you." I expressed my gratitude to the two who had hauled me up. Madam glanced at my slightly swollen belly and remained silent. Understanding her meaning, I clenched my right fist and struck my abdomen with brutal force. Instantly, blood soaked through my dress. The excruciating pain blurred my consciousness, draining all strength from my body until I could hold on no longer and fainted. When I awoke again, I found myself lying in Yunji's arms, with Madame and the matron sitting beside me, their voices stern and faces severe. This maid hid in the shadows and witnessed you pushing Concubine Chung into the well. The iris leaves used to weave the tripwire are only found in Concubine Zhang's courtyard. Nanny's son, how dare you harm Concubine Chung and the child in her womb? I'm innocent. This servant truly didn't know Concubine Chung was pregnant. Nanny's son knelt on the ground, trembling as she pleaded her case, only to be struck by a furious Yunji Ye's teacup, leaving her head bloodied. The sight made Concubine Zheng and Pearl Yi, also kneeling, scream in terror. Chung, you're awake. Yunji Yi noticed my movement. You're pregnant. Why didn't you tell me? Am I pregnant? I looked bewildered, then joyfully touched my belly. Really? I've been feeling nauseous lately, and thought it was just something I ate. How far along is the baby? What did the physician say? See me like this. Yunji Yi was overwhelmed with grief, holding my hand tenderly. The child is already. It's all right. There will be more in the future. The child. is gone? I froze for a moment, then clutched Yoonji-ye's hand and burst into loud sobs. My lord, it was Nanny's son. She pushed me into the well when I wasn't looking and killed our child. The Marchioness's eyes also reddened, feigning heartbreak. How could a mere servant like Nanny's son be so bold? Someone must have ordered her to do this. Her dark gaze fell upon Concubine Zheng. Concubine Zheng, just confess. The trip rope was woven from daylilies in your courtyard. Who else could be behind this but you? Concubine Zheng was too terrified to speak. Pearl Yi shielded her mother and argued defiantly. Father, don't be fooled. Trip ropes are sold everywhere. If my mother truly wanted to harm someone, why would she painstakingly weave one from daylilies in her own courtyard instead of just buying one? This is clearly a setup. Yoonji froze. I, too, was momentarily stunned. What she said made perfect sense. Unless their original plan was merely to push me into the water, as they couldn't have anticipated my swimming skills. The tripwire must have been someone else's doing. But who? I glanced at the madam, unwilling to dwell on it further. Today's mission was to eliminate Nanny's son, that vicious cur. Just then, someone rushed in, trembling like a leaf. My lord, madam, the midwife who buried the fetus has returned. She says. It was faintly discernible that the child was a boy. A loud crash echoed through the room. Yoonji swept everything off the table in one furious motion. He stood up, his eyes bloodshot with rage, deaf to Pearl Ye's pleas and Concubine Zheng's desperate cries. With a brutal kick, he sent Nanny's son flying several yards away. Nanny's son immediately coughed up a mouthful of blood and died on the spot. Guards, throw this wretched slave into the mass grave. Let it be an offering to my son's spirit in heaven. As for you two, his venomous gaze shifted to Concubine Zheng and Pearl Yi. You're confined to your quarters. Not a step outside until you've copied Buddhist scriptures 1,000 times. Madam and I exchanged glances, unable to hide the disappointment in each other's eyes. Copy Buddhist scriptures? What a joke. My Amy Chow died silently, leaving no trace behind. Her birth parents never even mentioned in front of me that this household once had another daughter of their own blood. Father, Pearl Yi pouted, throwing herself at Yoonji-ye's feet and tugging at his hand coquettishly. You once said that no matter if I was your blood or not, you'd always cherish me most. Were those just empty words? I'm not just your daughter. I'm also the future princess consort. Concubine Zheng also rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath. A miscarriage takes the greatest toll on a woman's body. Whether Concubine Zheng can conceive again remains uncertain. Yoonji-ye's expression softened. Before he could make a final decision, a report came from outside. My lord, my lady, Prince Victor has arrived. Before the words had fully left his mouth, a young man strode in, seeing Pearl Yi kneeling on the floor. His heart ached so much he nearly shed tears. Pearl, are you all right? Who dared bully my Pearl? Both Yoonji and his wife paled, hastily straightening their attire before bowing in greeting. I too had no choice but to drag my post, miscarriage body from the bed and kneel in obeisance. Yet Prince Victor acted as though he saw none of it, not bidding anyone to rise, instead tenderly comforting the aggrieved Pearl Yi. Watching this, I understood why Yoonji had been so indulgent toward Pearl Yi. How could he not indulge her? Prince Victor was a leading contender for the crown prince position. If pampering Pearl Yi could win them the future emperor's favor, what did sacrificing a mere biological daughter matter? Your Highness. After kneeling for some time, Yoonji-ye's face showed discomfort as he forced a smile to remind the prince. I heard my lord father in law troubled my betrothed over some insignificant concubine. Prince Victor sneered. Is this true? No such thing. No such thing. Yoonji-ye shook his head repeatedly. It's just my concubine being mischievous. As he spoke, his gaze turned to me. I could barely stand steady, and his eyes were icy. Since Lady Chung has miscarried, she shall be confined to her quarters for rest and recuperation. With one sentence, the victim became the punished, while the true criminal walked free. I closed my eyes, letting the servants drag me back to my courtyard. Spring arrived, carrying the laughter of Prince Victor and Pearl Yi on its breeze. Yet it chilled me to the bone. Why haven't you been visiting as often lately? Did you take a liking to Yi Xiao and now mourn her death? How could that be? It's just that official duties have kept me too busy. That country bumpkin Yi Xiao. How could she ever compare to you? Mingzhu, you're my rightful wife. She, at best, could only be a concubine. During my confinement, I endured immense suffering. Pearl Yi, heartbroken over the death of her wet nurse, who was also her birth mother, found every possible way to torment me. Cold meals and thin clothes were the least of it. She even made a special trip to see me, and upon arrival, threw a bucket of fish, gutting blood water over me as I lay bedridden. It was bone, chillingly cold and reeked of fish. For a moment, it eerily reminded me of my days on the fishing boat. But what Pearl Yi said next jolted me awake like a thunderclap. Lady Chung, she looked down at me with disdain. Don't think I don't know your true identity. You're the foster mother of that little wretch, Amy Chow. Aren't you? Just another vulgar peasant woman like her. In that instant, my mind was in turmoil. Madame had meticulously concealed my past. How did she know about my connection to Amy? Though my thoughts raced, I let just the right amount of confusion show on my face. Young miss, what are you saying? This humble one doesn't understand. Don't understand? She sneered. Don't you want to know how that little wretch died? Without waiting for my reply, she continued on her own. She was as dumb as a pig, utterly guileless. At our first meeting, I merely pretended to be pushed over, and that was enough to make father and mother despise her completely. First impressions are everything, aren't they? From then on, no matter what she did, people always assumed the worst of her. She hated my birth mother, so I made sure to keep my mother by my side, stabbing her eyes and wrenching her heart until she went mad. But she was too docile. No matter how I trampled on her, she would only retreat. Worse yet, Prince Victor seemed quite taken with such a foolish little rabbit. Honestly, what could I do? As for what happened next, I already knew most of it. Later, during the Empress Dowager's 60th birthday celebration, Pearl Yi stole the Marquis's gift prepared for the Empress Dowager, nearly plunging the entire household into the abyss of execution. Thanks to Prince Victor's intervention, everyone's lives were spared. After that, she joined forces with concubine Zheng to frame Amy Chow, claiming she was consumed by jealousy and wanted to drag the whole family down with her. Amy Chow, clumsy in speech and unable to defend herself, was publicly stripped and given 100 lashes, her chastity forever ruined, leaving her no choice but death. That little wretch had quite the figure. Pearl, you watched me gleefully as I was pressed onto the punishment bench. With each lash, my flesh trembled, swaying so mesmerizingly that the servants couldn't look away. TSK, TSK. But soon, that flesh swelled, festered, and could no longer tremble. Have you ever seen such a gory spectacle? The bones of her thighs and buttocks were laid bare. Pearl, you recounted Amy Chow's suffering with relish, smiling as she gazed at me, as if searching my face for fury or horror, anything to confirm my identity. But she was disappointed. I merely stared at her in terror. Why is the young mistress telling this humble concubine such wild tales for no reason? Finally, she fell silent. After scrutinizing me sharply for a long moment, she suddenly snorted, "How dull," then turned and left. Through the window, I overheard her speaking with her personal maid. That wretched Yi Chow claimed her foster mother was an excellent swimmer, so I thought. Turns out, she was merely suspicious and testing me. But I clenched my fists, nails digging deep into my palms. So, my dear Amy Chow's death was even more tragic than I'd imagined. The thought struck me like a blade, piercing my heart with unbearable pain. If that's the case, then let Pearl Yi taste the agony of losing a loved one too. Yoonji, ye seem to have forgotten about me entirely. I neither hurried nor grew angry, silently waiting for the Marquis to arrange my opportunity. Finally, when Yoonji left for Buddhist prayers, she had me delivered to the temple. Man cannot live without woman, she coaxed patiently. At first, he might endure, but gradually impatience would grow. Then, After surviving the most unbearable period, true asceticism could be achieved. I understood her meaning. She wanted me to seize Yoonji Yi on the day his desires burned hottest. On the 17th day of Buddhist worship, dressed in plain attire, I appeared behind Yoonji Yi as he struck the wooden fish, softly wrapping my arms around his waist. "My lord." He shuddered. "Acheng, you?" "This humble one missed you, my lord." My fingers traced circles on his chest. "Hearing you were here for worship, I sneaked out just to see you." With that, I wiped my tears and turned to leave. "Now that I've seen you, this humble one is content. I shall return to the manor and accept my confinement." Of course, I didn't leave. Yoonji Yi pounced on me with desperate urgency, tearing at my clothes like a ravenous wolf. "My lord, this is before the Buddha." I giggled. "What's there to fear? This makes it all the more thrilling." A month later, Yoonji Yi completed his Buddhist worship. Upon returning to the manor, he found me in coarse clothing, drenched in sweat as I scrubbed concubine Zheng and Pearl Ye's chamber pots, enduring the maid's gossip. What auspicious fertility signs. Those old Taoist priests love to exaggerate. Exactly. Conceiving means nothing. Delivering the child, that's the real test. Being born was useless anyway. Concubine Zheng is the lucky one, having her daughter swapped, only to receive a blessed star in return. Now, that girl will become a princess consort, and concubine Zheng's status will naturally rise with her. When that happens, who can say who will be the true lady of the house? As for concubine Cheng, she'll be left without even a grave to her name. I heard Prince Victor is already pressing our marquis to appoint a female heir. TSK, a female heir. Now, that's a first in the empire. I hadn't planned to say more, but then I caught sight of Yoonji Yi walking side by side with concubine Zheng, so I raised my voice slightly. Who can predict the future? Perhaps I'll rise to greatness, while that mother and daughter meet a gruesome end. The moment I spoke, every eye in the room turned toward me. "You wretched creature." Concubine Zheng stormed over and struck me hard across the face. "Who did you say would meet a gruesome end?" The blow sent me sprawling to the ground. Clutching my stomach, I moaned, my child. Ha ha ha." Concubine Zheng pointed at me and laughed. "Your child? It was aborted long ago. The Marquis has been away worshipping Buddha these days. How could you possibly be pregnant? Have you lost your mind?" She laughed too triumphantly to notice the sudden gleam in Yoonji Ye's eyes beside her. He shoved her aside without hesitation, strode quickly to me, and carefully lifted me into his arms. Cheng, you are with child again?" I nodded shyly. "Pregnant again? How? Unless you, quick, summon the imperial physician." Concubine Zheng's face turned ashen as she glanced between me and the overjoyed Yoonji Yi, then suddenly sneered. "So what if she's pregnant? How could some insignificant fetus compare to my Pearl?" The imperial physician happened to be checking the lady's pulse for her routine examination, so both arrived together when summoned. After taking my pulse, the physician looked astonished. "What's wrong?" Concubine Zheng mocked from the side. "Did she conceive some monstrosity?" No. The imperial physician was so excited, he became incoherent. "My lord, this concubine carries twins. From the pulse readings, 1 boy and 1 girl, a dragon, Phoenix Harmony. This is truly an auspicious sign." "What?" Apart from me and the madam, everyone present gasped in shock, though for some, it was surprise. For others, sheer terror. Yoonji Yi was the first to react. Cheng, why didn't you tell anyone about your pregnancy? Why were you doing such heavy labor?" Tears welled up before I could speak. My voice choked with emotion. The madam answered for me. "My lord, concubine Cheng and I had no choice. With household authority entirely in concubine Zheng's hands, and you away from home, if not for her endurance, this child might not have survived until your return." She dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief at just the right moment. "Zheng, you." Yoonji Yi turned to the stunned concubine Zheng, his face filled with disgust and wariness, before waving her off like shooing a fly. "From now on, the household authority returns to the madam. ensure concubine Chang's unborn child is protected at all costs. My lord, concubine Zheng shuddered in shock. She and the madam had been locked in rivalry for over a decade, with the madam suffering crushing defeats while the lord doted on his concubine at his wife's expense. Their enmity ran far deeper than anything involving a latecomer like me. If household authority were returned to the madam's hands, then, but Yoon Ji-yi, wild with joy, paid no heed to her pleas as he scooped me up and carried me away. Don't look anymore, concubine Zheng. The madam's gentle voice sounded behind her. The winds of change are blowing through this marquee manor. Just as the madam had predicted, from that day onward, all of concubine Zheng's privileges were revoked. I completely supplanted her as the most honored woman in the household. My status elevated from serving concubine to noble concubine. The lord even promised to raise me to co-wife once I bore him dragon, phoenix twins. At this declaration, even the madam's gaze toward me took on an indescribable, meaningful depth. When Pearl Yi returned from the prince's residence to discover the household upheaval, she naturally threw a tantrum and rushed back to seek the prince's support. But this time, Yoon Ji-yi was unexpectedly firm. Before, when there was no heir, I let your petty antics slide, but now, the Marquis will soon have a legitimate successor. How can I allow you to continue fooling around? Pearl Yi froze. Father, didn't you promise the prince that I'd be the female heir and inherit the family's legacy? Yoon Ji-yi shot her an impatient glance and had her thrown out immediately. When I heard about this from the madam, I couldn't help but laugh. That was then. This is now. Deep down, Yoon Ji-yi had never truly valued his daughter, nor did he see her as the continuation of his bloodline. That's why he never cared whether she was his flesh and blood. As long as this daughter could bring him benefits, she was a good daughter. By that measure, my Amy Chow was naturally the one he discarded. But a son, that was different in his heart. He believed that a son was inherently part of his life. Even a foolish son was more precious than a daughter who became empress. These weren't my assumptions. He said it himself, drunk with joy, stroking my belly. Thus, even when Prince Victor intervened, his stance remained unyielding. Your Highness must understand, this subject is over 30 and only now has his first son. How could I dare let ignorant women in the household endanger his life? And so, due to his insistence, the mistress retained control of the household, while I carry my pregnancy to full term, nearing delivery. Amid the chaos, I noticed with sharp eyes that the midwife's gaze seemed evasive. Realizing something was wrong, I acted decisively, ordering the maids to shut the doors and bar anyone from entering. If I couldn't trust anyone, then I'd deliver this child myself. With a piercing infant's cry, my twins, a boy and a girl, entered the world, and on the midwife's person, the maids found potent drugs meant to hasten labor and kill the mother. Seeing me barely clinging to life, Yoon Ji-yi flew into a rage and subjected the midwife to harsh interrogation. In the end, she couldn't endure it and confessed. It was concubine Zheng and Miss Pearl. They ordered this old servant to do it. Spare me, Lord Marquis. I didn't. Concubine Zheng showed some fear, but remained remarkably composed, even smiling at me. Isn't that right, Sister Chung? Pearl Yi cast a smug glance at the madam fingering her prayer beads nearby. I suspect someone bribed this midwife to say such things. No. The madam's face flushed with embarrassment and panic. What are you implying? Rewind 1 month earlier. On a frost, late at night, Pearl Yi had once paid me a visit. She came proposing an alliance. Concubine Chung, are you truly content to hand over the child you labor to bear to the madam's care? Why not collaborate with me and my mother instead? Topple the madam, secure my position as female heir, and I'll grant you substantial wealth, a new identity, enough for you to leave the capital far behind with both children. From now on, you could live as a wealthy lady, watching your own child grow up. Wouldn't that be better than spending your whole life bowing beneath the madam? At the time, I stirred the tea leaves in my bowl. After all the torment you and your mother put me through, why should I cooperate with you? She then leaned close to my ear and whispered secret. The madam has bribed the midwife to ensure you die from postpartum hemorrhage, eliminating you for good. My brow twitched, and I nodded slowly. Fine, how do we cooperate? Pearl Yi smiled. Simple. Don't let the midwife deliver your child. I'll interrogate her and force her to expose the madam. Wouldn't that be perfect? I also smiled. If she confesses the madam's involvement so easily, it leaves room for her to weasel out of it. Here's a better plan. You bribe the midwife again, but have her first accuse you and concubine Zheng. Then, I'll produce the crucial evidence proving the madam instructed her to frame you both. That way, the madam will have no defense left. Truly finished. Back then, Pearl Yi clapped her hands and said, "What a brilliant scheme." I also think my plan is quite brilliant. Under the triumphant gazes of concubine Zheng and Pearl Yi, I forced out a few tears, parted my rosy lips, and spoke in a trembling voice. Concubine Zheng, Miss Mingzhu, I have no grudge against you. Why must you repeatedly try to kill me and my child? My sudden betrayal left concubine Zheng and Pearl Yi completely stunned. Lady Chung, what did you say? Pearl Yi seemed afraid she had misheard and asked again, who harmed you? I shrank fearfully behind Yunji. Who else but you? No, that's not true. Pearl Yi suddenly shouted. We had an agreement. You were supposed to. She abruptly stopped. By now, she realized she had been deceived by me. Agreeing to cooperate with them had merely been a temporary ploy to deter their schemes against me during my pregnancy. At the same time, it avoided alerting the Marchioness, who was waiting to strike like a mantis stalking a cicada, since they each have their own desires. Don't blame me for exploiting them to achieve my true purpose. Meanwhile, Yunji was already in a towering rage, looking at the plump, fair, skinned twins in their swaddling clothes with lingering fear. He immediately ordered concubine Zheng to be dragged out. How dare you attempt to harm my son? Guards, gag her and beat her to death. No, please don't. Concubine Zheng cried so hard her makeup ran as she turned to Pearl Yi for help. Pearl, save your mother. But Pearl Yi trembled violently, squeezing her eyes shut to avoid looking at concubine Zheng. What a ruthless little thing she is. Concubine Zheng froze momentarily before letting out a heart-rending scream. Pearl, for your sake, I even abandoned Xiao Yi, my own flesh and blood. Have you forgotten? It was you who framed Xiao back then. Silence. Concubine, you committed the crime. You bear the consequences. Don't drag my reputation through the mud. Pearl Yi let out a sharp scream, rushed to concubine Zheng, and forcefully stuffed her own handkerchief into the concubine's mouth before snapping with false bravado, "Drag her out at once." Soon, the heavy sounds of flogging began, intermittently mixed with the muffled sobs of a woman. After 2/4 of an hour, silence returned. From start to finish, Pearl Yi kept her head bowed, not uttering a single word. But Yunji wasn't about to let her off. His resentful gaze swept over his daughter, flickering uncertainly before he finally exhaled sharply. You are hereby confined to your quarters until your wedding day. Not a single step beyond your door. The child was born safely. The madam came to me to fulfill her promise. She wasted no time, demanding to take my children away, pretending ignorance. I readily agreed, humbly begging only to be allowed to see them once a month, and sew them little clothes. Pleased by my compliance, the madam agreed without hesitation. In secret, however, she sneered. To put it bluntly, she's just an ignorant countrywoman. Madam, thanks to you noticing her 6th finger and knowing she's naturally fertile, the matron modestly replied. It's still the mistress who devised the brilliant plan, knowing she'd refuse if directly summoned to the manor as a concubine. So we stirred conflict between the real and fake heiresses, then took advantage of Yi Qiao's injury to strangle her and dump her in the mass grave. Only then could we trick this 6-fingered woman into the manor and use her womb to remove that thorn in our side. Lady Zheng. Yes, the mistress's voice grew distant. What a pity we couldn't use the midwife to eliminate this Lady Chung. Truly regrettable. It seems we'll have to wait for the next opportunity. By the way, didn't she just send over baby clothes? Let's dress the child in them first to avoid suspicion. I stood quietly beneath the window, listening without surprise. She didn't know that after my Amy Chow entered the Marquis' household, she once sent me a letter. In it, she told me how intensely interested the Marchioness was in me, constantly asking whether I was truly fertile. From that moment on, I became suspicious. Over the past year in the Marquis' household, her actions had long confirmed my suspicions. She was the mastermind behind Amy Chow's death and had repeatedly tried to kill me as well. So, I had long prepared a grand gift for her. Another rustling sound came from inside the room, likely the nanny unfolding the small garment. This fabric doesn't seem quite right. The nanny reached out to touch the clothing. The next moment, the garment split open, releasing countless willow catkins into the air. Lady Cheng's face instantly paled as she desperately recoiled. How could this be? How did she know both the nanny and I suffer from asthma? The nanny frantically tossed the garment aside and hurriedly helped Lady Cheng toward the exit. But with a sharp click, I had already bolted the door shut. Lady Cheng, you venomous witch! A heart-rending scream erupted from within the room. Yet within mere minutes, all sounds inside ceased. When I opened the door, I found the mistress and her servant collapsed on the floor in grotesquely twisted postures. I kicked their corpses to confirm they were truly dead, then tucked away the torn little garment, picked up the child, and stumbled out in a daze. Disaster. Willow catkins drifted into the room, and the madam and the old maidservant dropped dead on the spot. Yoon Ji-yi, immersed in the joy of fatherhood, paid no heed to the tragic deaths of his lawful wife and her elderly servant. On the contrary, he eagerly promoted me to the status of madam, clinging to me daily, hoping to sire more brothers for this pair of children. Alas, being in his 30s, he was somewhat lacking in vigor. So I smiled and slaughtered fish daily to prepare sliced fish soup for him. The Marquis merely suffers from physical exhaustion. His foundation is fundamentally sound. Once his vitality is replenished, how many sons could he possibly lack? He wholeheartedly agreed, and I played my part diligently, brewing him sliced fish soup every afternoon and delivering it to his study. After drinking that soup, his lower body grew increasingly spirited, yet in contrast, the rest of him grew increasingly unspirited. Day after day of taking the medicine, he gradually became perpetually erect, standing stiff day and night, until his body withered to a skeletal frame. When he died, his member remained rigid. He had literally burst to death from the swelling. How convenient. His first wife's coffin still lay in the temple. No need to buy another coffin. Just pry open a gap in hers, toss him in, and hastily seal them together. To the public, I claimed the Marquis had specifically requested a joint burial on his deathbed. Hearing this, people could only sigh and remark on the profound love between husband and wife. Once everything was settled, my infant son became the new Marquis of Fengxian, and I naturally ascended as the sole dowager of the Marquis' household. At last, I had the authority to give my daughter a grand funeral, but before that, I had to deal with Pearl Yi, who was still under house arrest. I went straight to the Yamen and struck the grievance drum, accusing Pearl Yi of slander and the murder of the Marquis' daughter, Xiao Yi. Prince Victor was furious. In the courthouse, he shielded the still, haughty Pearl Yi behind him and bellowed, "Without witnesses or evidence, how can you claim Pearl Yi stole the Empress Dowager's birthday gift? This is a capital offense." I was waiting for him to say exactly that. "Since your highness calls it a capital offense, does that mean if I truly produce a witness, your word still stands?" Pearl Yi scoffed at me. "If you have a witness that convinces me beyond doubt, I won't wait for the court's judgment. I'll dash my head against the courthouse walls myself." Her declaration sent murmurs through the crowd, with many praising Pearl Yi's unyielding resolve. Yet I simply smiled and clapped my hands. A woman stepped forward at the signal. Pearl Yi took one look at her and turned deathly pale. You, how are you still alive?" The woman removed her cloak, revealing a face bearing some resemblance to my Amy Chow. Concubine Zheng had returned, and no one knew Pearl Yi better than Concubine Zheng. Did they really think I'd let her die before Pearl Yi was overthrown? After all that had happened, she wasn't just the one who knew Pearl Yi best. She was also the one who hated her most. She looked at the precious daughter she had raised, her expression hovering between tears and laughter. Yes, Pearl. Who would have thought we'd meet again? Mother and daughter. Mother. Pearl Ye's face finally showed fear as she scrambled on hands and knees to concubine Zhang's side. Mother, you said it yourself. I am your most beloved daughter. You mustn't. Concubine Zheng had already pushed her away without hesitation, smiling bitterly, tall and graceful, with an air of elegance. In his early 30s, truly the prime of a man's life. As I finished speaking, she wiped away tears that had unknowingly fallen. On Vort by Vort, began recounting all the misdeeds Pearl Yi had committed. Aside from stealing the Empress Dowager's birthday gifts and framing Amy Qiao, she also recounted how Pearl Yi had schemed tirelessly to ensnare Prince Victor. Prince Victor, who had always protected Pearl Yi, was utterly shocked. Pearl, were all our chance encounters and time together nothing but lies? Prince Victor was deeply shaken and stormed off in a huff, leaving Pearl Yi kneeling in despair in the courthouse, covering her face as she wailed uncontrollably. In the end, she was convicted of stealing imperial property and murder, sentenced to execution in autumn. After her death, the capital gained another madwoman, this one surnamed Zheng. Rumor had it this madwoman was forcibly taken to witness the beheading and driven insane by the sight. Prince Victor didn't fare well either. The emperor, upon learning he had attempted to shield the thief who stole the Empress Dowager's birthday gifts, deemed him deeply unfilial and distanced himself from him thereafter. Not long after, Prince Victor's younger brother ascended the throne and, finding his elder brother intolerable, exiled him on a flimsy pretext. As for me, I had already left the capital with my 2 children and Amy Qiao's memorial tablet. I intended to find a place of serene beauty to bury my Amy Qiao and raise her younger siblings. That way, even after my death, there would be endless nephews and grandnephews to tend her grave.